Okay, so I chose the 2003 prose analysis question, and the prompt says, the following passage is an excerpt from The Other Paris, a short story by the Canadian writer Mavis Gallant. Read the passage carefully, then in a well-written essay explain how the author uses narrative voice and characterization to provide social commentary. So right off the bat, we know we need to pay attention to narrative voice, which is point of view, tone, style, diction, and characterization, which is the qualities of characters and how they're portrayed and described in the sample. So to start reading the sample, I went through and I marked up everything that I found was important in answering the question in the prompt. So everything in blue has to do with narrative voice, and I focused on sarcastic and ironic phrases and words, and then everything underlined and circled in red has to do with how the characters are described and characterization. So to name a few, the unsuitable medical student and the phrase no one implies that this person is a nobody right now, but after med school he will actually have money, and he would be quite suitable in Carol's eyes. She was under the illusion that in a short time she would be so old no one would ask her again. The excerpt says that Carol is 22. Even in a couple years, she's still going to be very young. And in my eyes, she has plenty of time. The fact that Carol was not in love with Howard Mitchell did not dismay her in the least. From a series of helpful college lectures on marriage, these lectures were not actually helpful, and they instilled a faulty view of marriage into Carol, and her views are actually causing her some major problems right now, so it's ironic that the narrator calls them helpful. Although a serious discussion of religious beliefs would have gravely embarrassed them, these societal views in Carol's time are quite different from today's views, at least in my opinion. And I at least value discussions like these because it helps provide insight into what this person's like, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Howard, best of all, was sober, old enough to know his own mind, and absolutely reliable, and who had sense enough. And these phrases make it seem as if these qualities alone make Howard a good or a suitable partner. So let's see, over here when Howard is described as uncommonly cautious, the narrator is saying it's not normal to be cautious, like it's expected of him just to jump into this relationship without considering anything else and not being cautious at all. For characterization, this is what everyone expected, and she had nearly come to believe it herself, and this is right after Carol's ideal proposal is described, and she had nearly come to believe in herself, or believe it herself. Kind of implies that she's gullible. She was under the illusion. She's impressionable again. The fact that Carol was not in love with Howard Mitchell did not dismay her in the least. Ties in with the college lectures leading her to believe that love isn't needed in a marriage. And then up here it says, Carol, with great efficiency, nearly at once set with the business of falling in love. Love required only the right conditions. She rated these chances of love. And this kind of makes me feel like she's treating this whole situation like a science project. Like, with enough efficiency and practice and order, she can make herself fall in love with Howard, when really that's not how that happens. And then Howard is not as described in as much detail. He is described as uncommonly cautious and lonely. So, connecting some literary devices to the theme, we've determined point of view, which is third-person omniscient, and we know this because the narrator describes the feelings and thoughts of both characters. and the tone is sarcastic, ironic, and has underlying contempt. And we know this because of diction, use of satire, irony, characterization, and we learn the outlook of the narrator, who obviously opposes societal views on proper marriage. The narrator uses devices such as satire, irony, and sarcasm to create a sense of uneasiness towards societal norms / views on marriage. And I'm going to read from a sample essay that scored a 9. And this person's handwriting is kind of horrendous, so I'm just going to read out part of this paragraph right here. And it says, one of the most important recurring themes is that of pressure by society to get married soon, and for all the wrong reasons. The supreme irony of the entire concept is that a set of criteria, none of which have to do with emotional attachment, have been developed for a successful marriage. So I just think that this sentence kind of ties everything together and connects the literary devices to the theme of societal pressure and marriage. So, writing a thesis, I'm going to use the student's thesis as an example. We want to make sure that we use strong doing verbs and a what does what format. Avoid have and be verbs and include lit terms and devices as much as you can. So I'm going to read what the student wrote for his thesis, and he said, the entire passage ridicules the awkward and misplaced, not to mention ludicrous, stress society and culture places on proper marriage. And this thesis follows the what does what format, but it doesn't fully answer the question. It doesn't include how the narrative voice and characterization ridicules this stress society and culture places on proper marriage. So definitely make sure to include every aspect of the question when you're writing this thesis out. And then to go to his conclusion, I thought he did very well on this. And conclusions are probably the weakest parts of my essays, so I'm just going to basically go off of what this student says. And he says, by illustrating these ironies, inversions, follies, inconsistencies, circular logic, and downright absurdity, Gallant succeeds in crafting a delicious mockery of not the institution of marriage, but the institution surrounding marriage. The exceptional character development and witty, biting tone serve to blast holes the size of Iowa into that poor, misguided institution. So here, the student did really well in pointing out some of the topics he wrote about previously in his essay, but he also did well in not summarizing his essay. He introduced a new concept, which is really important in writing a conclusion, and he just tied it together really well without merely summarizing what he had written before. And I think that is it.